Okay, we're going to do the problem statement for the Trident Swamp. And you can see they rent boats and they have guided tours. And what they want to do is find out how much money to charge. So once again, we look at this, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste it into my Notepad++, just so I can have it right there when I need it. So let's take a look at it. It said they want a receipt that shows. So let's just go ahead and copy this. Control C. And then we go down to output and Control V. So they want the number of watercraft. So I'm just going to fix that. And let's just go ahead and make this num craft. Whoops. All right, so that's the number of watercraft. Next thing they want is how much to charge for that. So let's call that watercraft fee. And then we have the charge for the guide. So let's call that guide fee. Like I said, you can call it whatever you want, as long as it makes sense. And then, of course, we have our total charge at the bottom. Okay, so that's the first part, and that's the easiest because they tell us exactly what they want out. Now we just have to camel it. If it said, if we were going to take in how many rowboats, how many canoes, how many rafts or whatever, and it said each type, then we would have to break it out. But here is very specific on what they want. Next thing we have is our constants. That's pretty easy. Again, we look for wherever there are numbers, and we can see that the numbers are right here. So let's go ahead and put those in. And we see canoes are 50. So let's do the canoe rate equals 50. And then we have a rowboat. So we'll call that the rowboat rate. And that's going to be equal to 30. And then the guided rate. Oops. And that's going to be equal to 100. All right, so that just makes sense, and we need to get these constant values documented. Now move down to the bottom again and say, okay, which of these are input and which of these are calculations? And of course, or logic. Again, let's go ahead and do slash logic. And the fee, watercraft fee, is going to be done by logic. So is the guided fee, and the total charge is going to be math. So these three, Control C, go into calculations, Control V, and then how many craft they want, Control C. Someone has to tell us that. All right. Once we've gotten these out of here into these two sections, then we just simply put a space equals space, Control C, next to each one, Control V, Control V, Control V, and we start with the bottom. So if I know what the watercraft fee is and I know what the guided fee is, then allows me to be able to figure out what the total charge is, because just add those two together. So I'm going to say, if I know the watercraft fee and I simply add that to the guided fee, there, now I have that. If the guided fee is 0, again, it's just adding 0 to whatever that number is. So, okay, and let's see, the guided fee is, you can see that we have guided fee and we have guided rate. So let's do this. Let's change this to rate. That makes more sense. And we'll call this to rate. Because we have a guided rate that's 100. And what we want to do is, if they say no, they don't want a guide, we're going to change the rate to 0. So it starts at 100. They don't want it, it goes to 0. That makes a lot of sense. The only time we'll have numbers in our calculations logic area if we are going to use 0. All and any known constants like 12 inches, 365 days, 7 days for a week. Those are known values, and we could type those in. And the only other value is 0. If this was another number, we'd have it up here as our constant, but 0 we can leave down in our logic. All right. So now we start, and we have to figure out what that watercraft fee is. And the watercraft fee is based upon the number of craft and the boat rate, or whatever, but what a craft rate. So let's go ahead and put that math in. So this is the num craft times, and let's call that the craft rate. Right, that makes sense. So we have our math done. And in fact, what I'm going to do is this right here is going to be logic. This is going to be regular math. So I'm going to take this and actually move it down. That wasn't the way I wanted to do it. I'm going to put this down here, because I'd like to separate my math and my logic. So this is going to be a logically assigned value. So will be the craft rate. But these other two are just straight math, so we're just going to leave them there. And it's good to go ahead and you can move things around depending on when they need to be done. All right, so the next thing we have to do is let's figure out what the craft rate is, since that's the next thing here. So I'm going to say that if canoe equals yes. Now I could say craft type equals canoe, but again, it's easier for a person to put yes or no in, but that's perfectly acceptable. So how you do it is up to you, and that's what makes programming. When I grade your assignments, there isn't going to be any two that are exactly the same, because everyone's going to decide different names and things like that, and different orders, in fact. And in fact, this should be here. So let's go ahead and move this up where it belongs. So if canoe equals yes, then we know that the craft rate is going to be equal to the canoe rate. Whoops, that's not equals canoe rate. And again, I select it from the list. But what happens if they say no? I don't do if canoe equals no, I just say else. And for this one is the craft rate. And that's going to be equal to the rowboat rate. Again, see how I'm selecting things from the list. So I know that these all match. All right, so that's the end of that decision. Now we have to determine whether they're going to use 100 or a 0, and that's another decision. So let's do if guided equals no, then the guided rate is going to be 0. Okay. Now, what's the else? What if they say yes? Nothing happens. Then it keeps the 100. But if they say no, then that 100 is changed to 0. And there's a couple of different ways we could have done this logic, but this way seems to be the most simple. And if we can get rid of an else, then that makes our lives easier, because that's 2 braces also we don't have to worry about. Okay, so the next thing I need is canoe. And that's going to be either yes or no. And also then guided yes or no. I like to put that in parentheses, what I'm anticipating, so that I can see that this matches that. And then when I do my prompt, I'm sure that's going to work properly. All right, so that's mostly what we need to do. Last thing is our scope, and only one family. Only 2 types of boats. So if they say, oh no, we also have a pontoon, well then this solution is not going to work. So we're assuming that since they told us about the rowboats and the canoes, that's all they have. And Only one rate for guide. All right, so that looks good. Now we have everything that we need because this problem is solved. Now we just need to go ahead and flowchart it. So we'll do that next.